Isabel Monroe had never belonged in this world of luxury. By day, she worked at a small art gallery in Brooklyn, curating exhibits for up-and-coming artists. By night, she managed a cozy book cafe, a second home filled with the comforting scent of coffee and the warmth of aged wooden shelves. She loved her work, but there were dreams she had never dared to chase. Becoming an interior designer, creating beautiful spaces, was a passion she had long since set aside in favor of practicality. Tonight, she had a blind date, one arranged by her best friend Mia. Mia had always insisted that Isabel spent too much time working and not enough time living. "He seems like a great guy," Mia had said. "Give yourself a chance." But when Isabel stepped into the restaurant, she didn't see the man she was supposed to meet. Instead, she chose the wrong table and found herself sitting across from Ethan Lancaster. Ethan Lancaster wasn't just any businessman. He was the CEO of Lancaster Holdings, one of the most powerful financial firms in New York. He graced the covers of business magazines, known in the industry as a master strategist, a man of precision and control. He was not the type to go on casual blind dates, and he was certainly not the man Isabel was supposed to meet tonight. But she didn't know that yet. Isabel pulled out the chair, offering a small, polite smile. "Sorry I'm late. I'm Isabel." Ethan looked up from his wine glass, his gaze cool yet intrigued. "Are you now?" A conversation began. A small mistake, but the start of something far bigger than either of them could have anticipated. Ethan Lancaster wasn't one to waste time on meaningless conversations, and yet the woman sitting across from him had somehow made him break his own rules. Isabel Monroe was unlike anyone he had ever met. She wasn't trying to impress him or win his approval. No forced smiles, no carefully crafted questions about his wealth or status, just honest stories about her life. She spoke about her work at the art gallery, how she loved helping young artists showcase their talent. She described the book cafe she managed in the evenings, a cozy haven where people could lose themselves in old novels over a cup of coffee. Ethan listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't glance at his phone like he usually did in social settings. Instead, he found himself drawn to the quiet passion in her voice, the way she spoke about building something meaningful, though she never admitted it outright. "And what about you?" Isabel asked, sipping her wine. Ethan smirked slightly. "Finance." "Sounds rented." Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, perhaps? Most people either tried to impress him or grew intimidated when they realized who he was. But not Isabel. She was simply herself. Time slipped by faster than they realized. When dessert arrived, Isabel chuckled softly. "I've been talking too much. Your turn. What do you do when you're not working?" Ethan hesitated before replying. "I analyze investments and look for new opportunities." She frowned. "That's still work." His lips quirked, but he said nothing more. Then Isabel's phone buzzed. Mia's name flashing on the screen. She glanced down at the message and her breath hitched. "Hey, so sorry. Your date got canceled. He couldn't make it." "Rain check?" Isabel froze, the color draining from her face. She slowly lifted her gaze to Ethan, realization dawning. And the strangest part? Ethan had known all along. The temperature in the room seemed to drop a few degrees. Isabel stared at Ethan, then back at the text message on her phone, her brain scrambling to piece everything together. I think there's been a mistake," she whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the table as she felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her. Ethan tilted his head slightly, as if observing her reaction with amusement. "Oh? And what mistake would that be?" She picked up her water glass, gripping it like a lifeline. I don't think I was supposed to sit here. I was actually supposed to meet someone else, but that date got canceled, and I had no idea. It seems I sat at the wrong table," Ethan finished for her, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. Heat rushed to her face. "Oh my God, I am so sorry. I've wasted your time." Ethan slowly set his wine glass down, leaning back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "How interesting." She frowned. "What's interesting?" His sharp gray eyes studied her. "You never asked who I was, never tried to impress me or make me feel important. For the past hour, you were just yourself." She swallowed. "I thought that's how conversations were supposed to work." "No, Isabel, not in my world." There was something in the way he said it that made her heartbeat stutter, but her rational mind screamed that this situation was entirely too strange. "Either way, I should go. I really am sorry for the mix-up, and thank you for being patient with me." Isabel rose quickly, but before she could turn away, Ethan's deep voice stopped her. "Stay." She froze. "What?" He stood as well, his towering presence making her feel small. "We had a good evening, and I see no reason to end it just because of a small misunderstanding. You can leave, or you can stay and see where this goes." Everything in her told her to walk away, but her heart whispered something else. She took a slow breath and sat back down. Isabel didn't know why she stayed. She should have left. She should have walked out, gone home, and laughed about this bizarre mix-up with Mia. But instead, she remained. Ethan's smirk deepened, as if he had known she would. He signaled the waiter for another pour of wine, his gray eyes sharp yet unreadable. "You'd like to have things planned, don't you?" he asked, voice steady. Isabel nodded. "I don't like surprises." "Then tonight must be a rather interesting exception." They kept talking, and slowly Isabel relaxed again. Ethan had a way of listening that made her feel as if the world had faded away, as if what she said truly mattered. But the moment they stepped out of the restaurant, reality came crashing back. Flashbulbs exploded. The rapid clicks of cameras filled the air. Isabel flinched, momentarily blinded. "What is happening?" She stepped back instinctively. Ethan placed a steadying hand on her lower back, guiding her through the chaos. "Just the press, they always follow me." "Follow you?" she echoed, still dazed. He opened the car door for her. "Get in, we'll talk inside." She hesitated. She barely knew him. But something in his tone, in his eyes, made her trust him. So she stepped inside. The door shut behind them, sealing them off from the frenzy outside. Isabel turned to face Ethan, her mind racing. "Who are you, really?" He tilted his head slightly, lips curving. "You haven't figured it out yet?" Her fingers hovered over her phone before she typed his name into the search bar. Results flooded the screen instantly. Ethan Lancaster, CEO of Lancaster Holdings, one of New York's youngest billionaires, a man Wall Street both feared and respected. Her heart pounded. This wasn't just an accidental encounter. She had just stepped into an entirely different world. The car glided smoothly through the streets of Manhattan, the city lights flickering across the tinted windows. Isabel clutched her phone tightly, eyes scanning the endless stream of articles about Ethan Lancaster, CEO of Lancaster Holdings, a billionaire, one of Wall Street's most powerful figures. She took a slow breath before turning to face him. "Why didn't you tell me from the start?" He tilted his head slightly, his smirk unmistakable. "And ruin a perfectly good evening?" Isabel shook her head, still struggling to process everything. This is insane. I'm just a normal person. I don't belong in this world." Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "The world doesn't matter. What matters is whether you want to be part of it." Her heart stilled for a beat. A part of her wanted to run, to get out of the car and return to her normal life, a life without flashing cameras, without speculation, without her name being whispered in elite circles. But another part of her wanted to stay. The car pulled up in front of her apartment building. Ethan turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Don't decide now," he said calmly. "Go home, get some rest. If you want to see me again, you'll know where to find me." Isabel reached for the door handle, but before stepping out, she hesitated. "Do you really think this could work?" His smile was knowing. "I never bet on something I don't believe has a chance to win." She stepped out, closing the door behind her. But as she climbed the stairs to her apartment, a realization hit her. She had only just met Ethan Lancaster, yet he had already shaken everything she thought she knew about herself. And the scariest part, She wasn't sure she hated it. For the next few days, Isabel tried to return to normal. She buried herself in work at the art gallery, preparing for an upcoming exhibit. In the evenings, she went back to her book cafe, brewing lattes for familiar faces, trying to ignore the fact that she couldn't stop thinking about Ethan Lancaster. But forgetting him became impossible when he walked straight into her world. One late afternoon, amidst the warm glow of the cafe and the scent of fresh coffee, Ethan stepped inside as if he had every right to be there. Gone was the sharp three-piece suit from the magazines. He wore a black sweater and dark jeans, effortlessly casual yet no less captivating. Isabel looked up from behind the counter, her heart skipping a beat. "What are you doing here?" Ethan rested his hands on the wooden counter, his gaze never leaving hers. "I wanted coffee." "And I wanted to see you." She arched a brow. "You can get coffee anywhere." His lips curved slightly. "But I can't see you just anywhere." She opened her mouth to protest but stopped. There was something in the way he looked at her, the patience, the quiet certainty, that made her realize Ethan Lancaster wasn't the kind of man to walk away from something he wanted. And right now, that something seemed to be her. They sat together in a quiet corner of the cafe, the spot where Isabel usually read after hours. Ethan didn't talk about work. He didn't bring up the differences in their worlds. He only asked her about the little things. Her favorite book, a cafe she'd always wanted to visit, the dream she once had but never chased. Slowly, Isabel realized he wasn't just trying to get to know her. He wanted her to understand that, despite everything that set them apart, she wasn't a mistake. She wasn't a fleeting distraction. And for the first time, she started to believe that maybe, just maybe, he meant it. In the days that followed, Ethan Lancaster slowly became a part of Isabel's world. He showed up at the art gallery, watching from a quiet distance as she explained abstract paintings to customers. He sat at her book cafe, reading in a dimly lit corner while she worked behind the counter. Every time their eyes met, he would offer the same small smile. Patient, unhurried, like he was willing to wait until she realized she wanted this too. And slowly she did. But the world outside wasn't so simple. One morning, Isabel opened her phone, only for a headline to make her stomach drop. The mystery woman beside Ethan Lancaster, just another passing fling? She scrolled down, her heart sinking as the article dissected every aspect of her life, her job, her background, the undeniable gap between her and Ethan. Setting her phone down, she felt an uneasy weight settle in her chest. The words on the screen blurred as her mind raced. Would this ruin everything? Would her life be reduced to nothing but a headline? It wasn't just the words in the article. It was the reminder of something she had tried to ignore. They came from two vastly different worlds. That afternoon, when Ethan arrived at the cafe, she couldn't hide the hesitation in her expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, studying her carefully. "What are we doing, Ethan?" Isabel sighed. "You're Ethan Lancaster. I'm just me. The press, the world, they all look at me like I don't belong in your life." Ethan was quiet for a moment before he spoke, his voice low and steady. "Are you in love with them?" She blinked. "What?" "Are you in love with the people out there?" he repeated. "Because if you're not, then why do you care what they think?" She didn't have an answer. Because deep down, she knew he was right. Isabel couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's words. He had said it so simply, as if the answer had always been there, she just hadn't been ready to see it. She didn't love the world out there. She didn't love the strangers behind their keyboards, the headlines twisting reality into whatever narrative they pleased. But did she love Ethan? One evening, with the New York skyline glowing against the night, Ethan took her somewhere unexpected. A vacant building, stripped down to bare steel beams and wooden floors. But as Isabel stepped inside, she realized it wasn't just any space. "Do you know what this is?" Ethan asked, standing beside her, gazing out into the open space. She shook her head. "It's my new project," he said. "I want to turn this place into a luxury hotel, but there's one problem. I haven't found anyone with the right vision to design it." Isabel turned to him, her heart pounding. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you want to chase your dream, you don't have to wait anymore." His voice was steady, sure. "You can start right here." She opened her mouth, but before she could respond, Ethan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. Isabel froze. "I don't just want you to design this hotel, Isabel. I want you by my side. Every day, every moment. Not just as a designer, not just for a season, but for a lifetime. I want you to be my partner in everything. Forever." He flicked the box open, a ring glimmering in the dim light. "Marry me." The world slowed. Everything had led to this. The mistake, the late-night conversations, the moments of hesitation, the undeniable pull between them, it had all brought her here. She looked into his eyes and saw nothing but absolute certainty. Taking a deep breath, she reached for his hand. Yes. Just days after the proposal, Isabel Monroe officially became Isabel Lancaster. There was no grand wedding with hundreds of guests, no media, no flashing cameras, just an intimate ceremony, a moment that belonged only to them. Ethan held her hands, his eyes never once leaving hers, and when the officiant asked the most important question, he didn't hesitate. "I do." Isabel looked into those sharp gray eyes, the eyes that had seen her in a way no one else ever had. And she whispered back, "I do." The vows were spoken, the ring was on her finger, and as Ethan leaned in to kiss her, she knew there was nothing in this world she would ever regret about this choice. A year later, Isabel Lancaster's first hotel opened its doors. The press called it the New York interior design revolution, but to Isabel, it was something far greater. It was proof of everything she had once feared and everything she had chosen to embrace. Ethan stood beside her at the grand opening, his hand resting lightly on her back. "Proud of me?" Isabel teased, a playful smile on her lips. He tilted his head, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Always." The camera flashes went off. Reporters called out questions, but this time Isabel didn't care. She had learned that the world outside didn't matter. What mattered was the man holding her hand. Because sometimes, one small mistake, like sitting at the wrong table, could change your entire life.